What's going on, guys, and welcome to the third episode of WrestleRant Ranks here on the channel. 2 weeks ago, we broke down the best and worst in every theme song in WWE Raw history. Last week, it was the greatest auras in NXT history, a random idea that popped in my head. This episode today, the five forgotten foes of Penta, Pentagon Jr., Penta El Cero Miedo, whatever you want to call him, that he must face again here in WWE. This was actually originally slated for last week because I thought he was going to debut on that first Netflix Raw 2 weeks ago. Instead, they saved it for Raw last week in San Jose, I believe it was, wherever they were on Monday's Raw for last week. And I didn't want to do this video on the same day he debuted because obviously for some people it was still a surprise. A lot of people knew this was coming. Regardless, we bumped it back to this week. But I've had this idea in my head for a little while now. And we'll go back to doing the tier list pretty soon. Next week will probably be a Royal Rumble related tier list, so stay tuned for that. But today I wanted to do a similar slideshow to last week with five forgotten foes that Penta has faced in the promotions that I have watched him in dating back over a decade. I'm one of those fans that first became familiar with Pentagon in his time in Lucha Underground when that started on the air over 10 years ago, late 2014 on the El Rey network. And honestly, we might do a similar tier list in the future, probably a similar slideshow of matches that you need to see from Lucha Underground. And it's been so long since I've seen it that I'm going to need a refresher by rewatching the show. But Pentagon was one of the first names that stood out to me of someone that I had no idea of who he was. Like Prince Puma, I'd heard his name, Ricochet, obviously, who was under the mask. I'd heard his name a little bit in the years preceding Lucha Underground. Obviously, John Morrison, Johnny Mundo on the show had come from WWE, among other people. But Penta was a name from AAA, which is, I believe, where he originated, the company where he really made a name for himself before coming over to the U.S. for Lucha Underground, which was taped out of the California area from 2014 through 2018. He was one of those names that I was not familiar with at all that immediately stood out to me as a star on the rise. And then in the years since, going on to work with MLW, I didn't really watch his work there. I know he was there as one half of the tag team champions with Rey Fenix. But I really watched his work throughout all of Lucha. I think he was there for all 4 seasons. He then went on to TNA in 2018, that would have been, for a stint through 2019, starting off as the Impact World Champion. I think his debut match in TNA Impact in 2018, he won the fucking TNA World Championship. And then he went on to win the World Tag Team titles with his brother Phoenix, obviously an amazing team. And then going on to join AEW in 2019, where they were also the AEW World Tag Team Champions, Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions. Now, this is only going off of singles matches that Penta has had in the last 11 years that I have seen in Lucha, in TNA, and in AEW. I have not really watched his work exclusively in AAA or in CMLL if he had competed there, or in MLW, or even indie promotions. And I've seen him on the indies before working matches with like Sami Callihan and people like that. But Sami Callihan doesn't currently work for WWE, so I'm not going to include him as a forgotten foe of Penta. And I say forgotten, some of these matches you probably do remember, but without further ado, let's get into it here. Five forgotten foes I would like to see Penta face again in singles competition in WWE, now that they also work for WWE. Because obviously, before I get into it, he faced Chad Gable in a great match last Monday. There's a lot of fresh matches Penta can have in WWE, but there's also a fair amount of people currently on the roster that he has actually faced before, whether you remember it or not. So let's get into it. Starting with number 5, and it's, I say ranking, but you can really put these in any order and it wouldn't really necessarily matter. But right there you see Pentagon being laid out in Lucha Underground, but I believe the group that call themselves the Black Triad. Now, the woman second from the left was actually previously, I believe, a ring announcer actually for WWE many, many years ago. And then she went on to join Lucha as like kind of more of a character than a wrestler. She didn't really wrestle many matches. Honestly, I can't remember too many of the feuds that she had. I know she had a pretty long-standing feud. I don't remember the guy that Rey Mysterio had managed. I don't remember exactly, but it's not really about her. It's more about the people that Pentagon faced in a gauntlet match on an episode of Lucha Underground back in late 2016, season 3. I want to say the November 30th episode specifically. What number season that was, I don't remember, but this was back in 2016. And he had a gauntlet match against 3 names that you might know. Mayu Iwatani, I believe, was the third member that is the only one of these 3 did not go on to WWE, but she has had a lot of success in New Japan and in Stardom. I believe she's the current IWGP Women's Champion. I think she just defended that championship successfully, actually, at Wrestle Kingdom. But not necessarily about her. But the other two women that he had faced on that night. Yes, Lucha Underground did a lot of intergender matches. And one of those intergender matches, or actually two of them, one was against Kairi Sane, and they did not go by these names at the time, I don't believe. This other individual definitely did not. But Kairi Sane was one of the opponents he faced on that show. The third woman he faced on that show that actually beat Pentagon, I think in the third and final phase of that gauntlet match, Io fucking Sky. Now, does WWE do intergender matches? No. And I realize that this is not going to happen. WWE never really does intergender matches. The only one I can remember in recent memory was when they did matches with fucking James Ellsworth, and those weren't really to be taken seriously. Io Sky, I think, could really hold her own. If the right people were in the ring, I think Io Sky could absolutely hold her own in like a men's rumble. Now, obviously, this isn't a one-on-one situation, and no one would really even remember the reference. But I think Io Sky squaring off again against Penta would be fucking sick. Go back and watch the match first of all. A lot of people have retroactively looked back at that match and said, man, that was really a standout showing for all three women that were in the ring with Penta that didn't really have, prior to that point, a whole lot of exposure on the U.S. wrestling scene. I had never even heard of Io Sky or Kairi Sane or Mayu Iwatani up to that point. This was back in 2016. And honestly, not really coincidentally, I feel like it definitely played a part in what happened next. Within a year, both Kairi Sane and Io Sky were in WWE. Kairi Sane was signed maybe within the year. I think she wanted to win the Mae Young Classic in September of 2017. And then Io Sky, I think, went on to sign to WWE maybe in early 2018, maybe late 2017. I think 2018 is when she joined WWE. So they were joined. They were signed soon after. I wanted to see them as what WWE ended up doing with Damage Control. This past year, obviously, Asuka was in that spot instead. Mayu Iwatani never ended up coming to WWE. Maybe at some point she will. But specifically, check out the match that Penta had on Lucha with Io Sky and tell me you would not want to see that match in WWE. Originally, I had the spot saved for Chelsea Green. You've probably seen that footage before shared on social media. Chelsea Green was another one who did not go by that name in Lucha Underground. I don't even know if she even really had a run. She had a one-off match against Penta, and it was fucking awesome. Like, it was crazy. And then she also ended up getting signed by WWE literally soon after. If she wasn't already in WWE by the time that it finally aired. But that was also a crazy match. I say the Io Sky match because I feel like that would be more competitive. Chelsea Green with her current character is not what she was in Lucha for that one time. Chelsea Green and her current character would not fare well against Penta in WWE. Let's be honest. If she was taken seriously, then maybe. Io Sky is still the same badass today that she was back then, and I just feel like that would be such a fun match. It's never going to happen, but even just to see it referenced or to see it revisited in some form or fashion would be pretty fucking cool. Moving on to number 4, Penta and Cody Rhodes. These two had a match. I mean, a number of matches and tag team matches and whatnot. Cody Rhodes kind of dominated the mid card in AEW because through his own actions, he could not challenge for the AEW World Championship after late 2019. So he spent a lot of time in the tag team division, specifically the mid card, as the TNT champion from early 2020 through 2022 when he left the company for AEW, or rather, he left AEW for WWE, returning at WrestleMania, obviously, 38 in 2022. But anyway, they did have a one-off match. I want to say this was early 2021. You see fans in the audience there in that picture. I think that was when in the early years of AEW. But I remember they did not have their first singles match until Pentagon went on his own. Because Penta really didn't have a whole lot of singles matches in AEW. He had a bunch, but Ray Phoenix was the one that was more so pushed on his own as like the former AEW International Champion. I feel like he had a lot more singles matches than Penta did. But Phoenix got hurt a hell of a whole lot. So because he got hurt a lot, Penta was on his own a fair amount, specifically in 2022 as Penta Dark, or Penta Oscuro rather, because I don't know if they can call him Penta Dark at that point. But they had a really fun match. I don't think it was for the TNT Championship. I think it was just a one-off match on a random episode of Dynamite. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure it was the St. Patrick's Day Slam episode. It was either that show where he faced Cody or when he faced the other individual that I'm going to have listed a little bit later on. But Cody Rhodes is now the current undisputed WWE champion. He's obviously leveled up in a major way since this last match happened, since this match last happened a couple of years ago in AEW. And Cody's also much more of a fan favorite than he was in AEW towards the end there when this match happened a few years back. The current Penta, if he's still portrayed as a badass in WWE, as we saw last Monday during his debut, against current Cody, who is at the top of his game, would be a lot of fun. So I would love to see Cody and Penta run it back in WWE. I'm not sure if we've seen any matches happen in AEW and then they have a rematch in WWE, just because not a whole lot of people have jumped ship yet from AEW to WWE. I mean, a handful of people have, like a Shawn Spears and Jade Cargill, but I'm talking a match, not matches that we got in WWE that we then saw in AEW. I'm talking matches that happened in AEW, especially for the first time, that we would then see in AEW or WWE. I don't think that's happened yet. Um, I know Cody and Punk never had a match, but like, for example, Cody and Shawn Spears had a match at All Out, I think 2019. And we obviously haven't seen that match yet in WWE. I'm not sure we ever will. I think Shawn Spears is NXT for life at this point. But Penta and Cody is certainly a possibility. Would love to see it on the grand stage. Maybe even a bigger bout this time around, with Cody being a bigger star than he was 4 years ago or 3 years ago when this match last happened one-on-one. Number 3 is a match you're probably not aware of. LA Knight back when he went as Eli Drake in TNA in 2018. I mentioned earlier at the start of the video. Penta, a former Impact World Champion, having won that championship in his debut match for the promotion, a triple threat match with the then champion Austin Aries. Remember that guy? And his brother Ray Phoenix. A really fun match, shockingly walking out the new Impact World Champion. He went on to lose that belt back to Austin Aries within like a month or two, but he had a very fun run while he was champion. And he had a very fun run in TNA in general that doesn't really get talked about enough because he was in Lucha for far longer. He was in AEW for 5 or 6 years. So people don't really talk about Penta and his time in TNA, since a lot of that especially was spent in tag team matches with Ray Phoenix facing LAX and the North and teams like that, I believe. So we never really got to see, and the North may have actually come around post Lucha Bros, so never mind, I guess. But early on in his run as the TNA World Champion, he actually defended that championship against one of the former champions, Eli Drake. Obviously, now, I said earlier, now known as LA Knight. They had a singles match in an episode of Impact in like the spring of 2018, and it was a fun match. And I feel like a heel LA Knight specifically, and you could reverse the roles and make Penta the heel, because we've seen Penta as a heel, and he's fucking great as a heel. Regardless of what the dynamic is, I feel like this would be such a great match to revisit in modern day WWE. And a lot like with Cody, both guys have really leveled up since then. Penta's far more experienced following the AEW tenure. LA Knight being a former United States champion, much bigger star, very over with the audience. This would be a really fun mid-card match, another Raw or SmackDown, or as a full-fledged feud. So I would love to see him run it back, maybe for a different piece of gold this time, a different piece of hardware, whether it be the Intercontinental Championship or the United States Championship. Probably not a world title, let's be honest here, but I think seeing them run it back would be very cool. Getting to number 2, the other AEW match that we saw a couple of years back, revisited here in WWE, Penta versus CM fucking Punk. And quite honestly, of all the matches I've listed here, I feel like this is probably maybe not the most likely. The next one might be the most likely, but I could still see this happening at some point. CM Punk doesn't really work random Raw matches. His recent Raw match against Seth Rollins was his first Raw match since his last Raw match in 2014, 11 fucking years ago. And I say, like, why am I talking Raw matches? I just don't see this being a full-fledged feud. CM Punk, for the amount of time that he's with WWE, probably doesn't have like 10 feuds left in him. Whatever they're doing with him is typically longer term. So, like, in the year plus that he's been back with WWE, and I know he was hurt for a good stretch of time, but he's only feuded with Drew McIntyre and Seth Rollins. Now, we might add a third to that list soon in Roman Reigns, but, like, these are all top performers. Unless Penta is promoted to that level, which at some point I hope he is, maybe not immediately, but he did have a great debut last week. It's pretty evident to me he's not being pushed towards world championship contention anytime soon. So my point is, we may not see this match ever in WWE. I feel like we should, though. And I like their last match. I've seen people post videos of their botches in that match on Dynamite that they had. This was definitely when Penta was Penta Oscuro. I remember that. This was when Ray Phoenix was hurt. He was out there having random fucking matches on Dynamite. And I saw this advertisement. I'm like, yo, CM Punk and Pentagon Jr., where was this? Like, if you had told me that in 2014, 2015, when it was like prime Pentagon and Lucha Underground and CM Punk was out of the business, I would have told you that's fucking insane. But we got it on a grand stage of Dynamite back in 2022, and it was a fun match. I enjoyed it for what it was. This was back when Punk was on his road to becoming the AEW World Champion for the first time, which he did end up winning a Double or Nothing. But this was post MJF feud, I believe, and pre becoming AEW World Champion. So it wasn't really a match that mattered, so to speak. There was no feud, there was no real build up. It was one of those random ass matches that you kind of forgot happened on Dynamite, and it was a match that existed. Unless you saw the recent clips on social media of people posting, clips of their previous encounter. But beyond that, you would forget it even happened because it wasn't really like a full fledged feud or a meaningful match for a championship, like I said earlier. But I would love to see this again in WWE. Prime Punk, I mean, that's long gone, but Punk is still in great shape. He can very much hold his own. We saw that recent match with Seth Rollins. That was great. The McIntyre matches I really much enjoyed. Penta can still go. Both guys, I mean, I know Punk is like 40 something, obviously. Penta's either already 40 or closing in on 40. So it's not like these guys are. It's not like this match isn't, it's not what it could have been 10 years ago, like I said, back in 2015 or even earlier than that. But I still feel like for the aura alone, to bring back that word from the last video, this would be a blast. I feel like their dynamic would work really well together, especially if Penta was a heel. You turn Penta heel as Penta Dark, and he goes after CM Punk. Punk has he has a history of working well with the Luchadors, specifically Rey Mysterio from their feud in 2019, or rather not 2019, fucking 2010 rather. Among other people, I feel like that would be a good one. So I would love to see that match at some point in WWE, but not nearly as much as I want to see this match in WWE at some point, which is probably the most likely, to be honest. Rey Mysterio. Now, to answer the obvious question, have these two had a match before? On a main stage, the answer is yes. They've actually had more than a couple of matches, I believe. I mean, the one that I've seen is this one from Lucha, and I believe this was when Penta was Penta Dark. A lot of the matches on this list are when he was Penta Dark, either in AEW or in Lucha Underground. But I think this was towards the end of Rey's time in Lucha. He joined season 2. He left WWE in early 2015. That was when his deal expired. And then he joined Lucha Underground, I think in early 2016. And he was there, I want to say, just for that second season. I don't even think he was there for the third season. I think Rey was just there for that second season. But in that season, they gave us a lot of dream matches with Rey Mysterio. This one being chief among them, in my opinion. And I think Penta ended up going over. I could be wrong, but they worked really well together. They had a very fun match. Again, this match is not what it would be at that point if they were to do it 10 years later in 2025. But Rey has shown through the stem cell surgery, whatever the fuck he's done, the Fountain of Youth, he can still very much go and have very fun matches. We recently just saw Rey Mysterio and Kevin Owens for the first time one-on-one on SmackDown, and that was a fun match. This would not be a first time ever in wrestling, but it would be a first time ever in WWE. Now, I think it would be a perfect matchup for Penta at a WrestleMania, so to speak, specifically, just to get him on a big stage against a big name. I think Penta turning heel on Rey Mysterio was the direction I always envisioned for him. And I feel like that the perfect time to do it would be at a WrestleMania 41. I know he's super over right now immediately upon his arrival as a babyface, but if you do turn him heel at some point, maybe he teams with the New Day or against the New Day with Rey Mysterio and then proceeds to turn on Rey Mysterio, break his arm or something like that. I feel like that would be the perfect way to get over Penta as a major threat in WWE from the get-go. Honestly, and it's probably not going to happen, but if they were to do Backlash, let's say, in Mexico, oh my god, this would be a perfect fucking match to do. I mean, Penta and Dom, too, would also be fun, but I didn't list that here because I don't think Penta's ever faced fucking Dominic Mysterio before, because Dominic, I think, has only ever wrestled in WWE. So obviously that match hasn't happened. Hopefully it will. That's a likely possibility. But Rey and Penta specifically, I think would be pretty fucking awesome. Check out their previous encounters. I think in doing my research for this for this fucking slideshow and trying to find the pictures, I think they had a match actually in Northeast Wrestling, a promotion that's very near and dear to my heart that I've been following for over 15 years now. They're an amazing promotion. I think they had a match at one of their shows only a few years ago, back in 2018, 2019. And that was right before or right after Rey Mysterio had returned to WWE. Maybe right before, actually. Probably not right after, but I think it was after the Rumble appearance, but before he signed full time. They had a match there, I think. And Penta was doing a lot of dates with NEW at that point. But there was also the match they had in Lucha Underground that you should totally check out from 2016. I feel like they really brought the best out of each other. Ray was a perfect fit for Lucha Underground at that point, and Penta, to me, alongside Prince Puma, was really the heart and soul of that promotion. So hopefully at some point we could see this match again. I think it'd be the best way to go. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. This has been another installment of WrestleRant Ranks. I know the video is over 20 minutes long. Maybe we'll try to trim it down in the future. I know I do tend to talk a lot, but I'm very excited about this sort of stuff. So if you like the longer videos, that's cool. If not, maybe in the future we can do even shorter lists. I know the NXT Aura list was even longer than this one. I spoke a lot for that one, but that was 10 compared to 5. So I think next week will be a Royal Rumble type tier list, whether it be Rumble winners, best Rumble matches, whatever it might be. Stay tuned for that here on the channel next week. But until next time, guys, be sure to check out the other installments of WrestleRant Ranks from the past 2 weeks, breaking down every Raw theme song in history from 2 weeks ago and the greatest superstars, top 10 superstars in NXT history with the greatest auras in the history of that brand. So until next time, guys, I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.